You ever reach a point where you just snap? I did. The morning I found my mailbox flattened for the third time that month. The tire tracks were the same, the direction the same, and I'd bet my mortgage the driver was the same too. Karen, our self-appointed HOA queen. She'd claimed my old wooden post was too close to the road. Guess that gave her license to keep running it over. The first time I laughed it off. The second I left a note. The third? That's when something in me broke. I decided if Karen wanted to play demolition derby, I'd give her a mailbox she'd never forget. One that could fight back. I've lived in Maplewood Estates for 8 years. It's one of those neighborhoods that looks perfect on the surface. Manicured lawns, white fences, cul-de-sacs so quiet you can hear the sprinklers clicking at night. When I bought my little ranch-style home here, I thought I'd finally escaped chaos. No more noisy apartments or cranky landlords. Just peace, a porch swing, and a mailbox by the road. Then I met Karen. She wasn't just any neighbor. She was the HOA president. The kind who treated the job like it came with a badge and a squad car. Her hair was always perfectly curled, her lips always pursed, and her clipboard was practically glued to her hand. If a blade of grass dared to grow half an inch too high, she'd notice. At first, I tried to stay polite. You know, the neighborly wave, the forced smile. But Karen thrived on finding problems. The first notice I got was about unauthorized solar lights on my walkway. Then it was trash cans visible from the street. Every week, another letter, another rule. Still, I played along. I wanted peace more than pride. Then came the mailbox. My old one was simple. A wooden post, black metal box, a little weathered but solid. I'd installed it myself the first weekend I moved in. Karen never liked where it stood. Claimed it was too close to the road and not compliant with HOA aesthetic standards. I checked the bylaws. It wasn't. I was fine. But that didn't matter to her. The first time it got hit, I assumed it was some delivery driver who misjudged the turn. The tire tracks curved just right, clipping the edge of my lawn. I fixed it, repainted the post, and thought nothing more of it. 2 weeks later, it happened again. Same tracks, same angle. I started noticing how Karen would slow her beige SUV when passing my house, eyes flicking toward my mailbox with that smug little grin. Once I even caught her backing up after her mail run. Her bumper just a little too close for comfort. That's when I knew. I put up a small camera under the porch eave. Nothing fancy, just enough to cover the mailbox. I didn't tell anyone. And when the footage came back a few mornings later, there it was, her car. Clear as daylight, her nameplate on the rear window, her bumper crunching through my post like it was a twig. Then she just drove off. I remember sitting there staring at the screen, my hands shaking. Not from fear, from disbelief. This wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. I printed a still from the video and walked to her house. I wasn't angry yet, not really. I thought maybe we could handle it like adults. When she opened the door, though, her expression said everything. She wasn't surprised. "Karen," I said, holding out the photo. "You hit my mailbox." She glanced at it, shrugged, and said, "Well, maybe if it wasn't so close to the road, that wouldn't happen." Then she shut the door in my face. That was the moment I realized the peace I'd moved here for didn't exist. Not while Karen ruled this street. And that's when I decided. If she wanted to play games, I'd learn the rules better than her. After that day, things changed. Not just for me, for the whole street. It was like Karen had flipped a switch and decided I was the new neighborhood problem to fix. I replaced the mailbox again, this time with a thicker post and a small concrete base. I even measured it twice to ensure it met every HOA guideline. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I followed the rules to the letter, she'd leave me alone. She didn't. 3 days later, I got another letter. "Your mailbox does not conform to the Uniform Visual Appeal Standard. Replace it within 5 days or face a fine of $200. I laughed out loud when I read it. The Uniform Visual Appeal rule didn't exist. I checked. She'd just made it up. I went to the next HOA meeting, held in her spotless living room like always. It was packed with neighbors pretending to care about flower beds and fence colors. I waited for my turn to speak, holding her violation letter in my hand like evidence. When I stood, all eyes turned. Karen, I said evenly, you've sent me a fine for a rule that doesn't exist. Would you like to point out where this uniform visual appeal clause is written? She smiled that condescending smile. It's an amendment I'm drafting, she said sweetly. We can't have mismatched mailboxes ruining the street's aesthetic. You mean my mailbox? I shot back. Her eyes flicked like daggers. If the shoe fits, Ethan. A few people chuckled awkwardly. Most looked down. No one wanted to cross her. Karen controlled fines, landscaping, parking, even who got approved for home paint colors. That night, I realized I wasn't just dealing with a bad neighbor. I was dealing with a tyrant. The next morning, I woke to find my new mailbox covered in red spray paint. Remove it or else. My stomach twisted. Not because of the threat, but because I knew exactly who'd done it. I knocked on Karen's door, camera in hand, still recording. When she opened, she gave me the same smug look as before. Morning, I said, voice steady. Want to explain the vandalism on my property? Her eyes narrowed. Don't accuse me of anything without proof. Oh, I've got proof, I said. Security footage. You, in that pink blazer, 11:37 p.m. last night. For the first time, I saw her facade crack. Just for a second, enough to tell me I'd hit the mark. You're bluffing, she said, crossing her arms. Then why are you sweating? She slammed the door again. I posted the footage snippet, not the full video, just enough, on our neighborhood Facebook group. Captioned it, wondering why my mailbox keeps getting hit. Within hours, it exploded. Neighbors who'd been quietly fed up finally started talking. Stories poured out about fines for bird baths, threats over porch decorations, even accusations about her towing someone's car for being an eyesore. For the first time, the power shifted. Karen wasn't untouchable anymore. That night, someone rang my bell and ran, a childish retaliation. I stepped outside just in time to catch the beige SUV disappearing around the corner. I knew then that this wasn't over. Karen wasn't going to back off quietly, and I wasn't going to take it anymore. After that video hit the neighborhood page, I became a local celebrity, or a target, depending on who you asked. Some people stopped by just to shake my hand and whisper, "Finally." Someone stood up to her. Others avoided eye contact, afraid of being next on Karen's list. Karen herself went nuclear. The next HOA bulletin that hit our mailboxes looked like something out of a courtroom. Effective immediately, all homeowners must submit their mailbox design for approval. Non-compliance will result in daily fines. She didn't mention me by name, but everyone knew who it was aimed at. 2 days later, I got my first daily fine. $50 a day. Apparently, my mailbox did not meet pending design standards. I hadn't even had a chance to appeal before she started adding up charges. I called her office. She didn't answer. I emailed the HOA board. Nothing. It was clear she controlled every channel, so I started documenting everything. Dates, photos, letters, timestamps. I built a folder on my computer labeled Karen Files. One evening, while mowing the lawn, I caught her standing across the street with her phone up, filming me. Need a close-up? I shouted over the mower. She lowered the phone slowly. Just ensuring compliance, she said with that smug grin. I killed the engine and stepped closer. With what? The HOA handbook or your personal vendetta? She smirked. Maybe both. That night, someone dumped a pile of garbage on my driveway. Soda cans, old pizza boxes, even a broken lamp. My security camera caught a glimpse of a beige SUV driving off. The next morning, I found another letter taped to my door. Violation, unsightly debris on driveway. Fine, $100. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about mailboxes anymore. Karen was trying to break me, grind me down with so many fines. I'd either sell or beg forgiveness, but she underestimated how stubborn I could be. I started visiting neighbors, asking about their own run-ins with her. Turns out she'd fined old Mr. Jacobson for his American flag being too faded. She'd threatened to sue the Lopez family for installing a basketball hoop. She even forced a widow to remove her late husband's garden gnome collection because it disrupted visual uniformity. I wasn't alone. So I suggested something simple. Let's attend the next board meeting together. People nodded, hesitant but curious. The rumor spread. Quiet at first, then louder. You could feel the shift. Karen must have sensed it too, because a few days later, she came marching up my driveway, clipboard in hand, wearing that pink blazer like a suit of armor. "You're violating Section 8, she barked. I raised an eyebrow. "Which one's that?" "The section you wrote this morning?" Her nostrils flared. "Your grass is an inch too high. Guess I'll mow it after I fix the mailbox you keep running over." Her lips twitched. "Watch it, Ethan. You're close to being referred to collections." I smiled, slow, deliberate. "Good. I hope they accept evidence videos as payment." For once, she didn't have a comeback. She turned and stormed off, heels clicking like gunfire on the pavement. That was the moment I knew she was losing her grip. And if she wanted a war, I was done playing defense. There's a fine line between patience and surrender, and I'd officially crossed it. Every fine, every note, every smug smirk from Karen pushed me closer to the edge. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was focused. If Karen wanted to destroy my mailbox, I'd build one she couldn't touch. I spent a few nights doing research, forums, videos, even engineering blogs. Turns out I wasn't the first homeowner with a mailbox problem. People had built reinforced posts before, steel cores, concrete bases, even armor plating. Most were overkill, but I wasn't going for subtle. I drew out my plan, a mailbox built from solid steel, anchored in a concrete-filled barrel, buried 3 feet deep. The kind of post that could stop a truck. I told my buddy Jake, who runs a local machine shop, about the idea. He laughed at first, but when I showed him Karen's video and the fine notices, his face hardened. "Man," he said, "I've got just the thing. 1/4-inch plate steel. We'll make you the Fort Knox of mailboxes." We spent a Saturday welding it together. Thick, heavy, and perfectly rectangular. It looked like something out of a military base. I spray-painted it matte black, polished the numbers, and sealed it with a fresh flag on the side. It wasn't just a mailbox. It was a statement. When I set it into the concrete, I made sure it aligned perfectly with the HOA's measurements. Height, distance from the curb, everything by the book. Karen couldn't complain legally. Not this time. The next morning, I stood by the curb with my coffee, admiring the result. Sunlight gleamed off the metal like armor. I could almost feel Karen's disapproval radiating from across the street. Sure enough, her beige SUV crept down the road, slowing in front of my house. She rolled down the window and scowled. "That's not an approved design," she said. "It's compliant," I replied calmly. "Page 24, Section 3, height, color, and placement, all correct." Her eyes narrowed. "It's industrial," I smiled. "Durable, too." She sped off without another word, but I saw the flicker in her eyes, the frustration of someone losing control. 2 nights later, my security camera caught her SUV again. Headlights off, engine idling. Then, bang, a loud crash echoed through the street. I bolted upright in bed, heart racing. When I ran outside, I saw it. The front end of her SUV crumpled against my steel mailbox. Her bumper was hanging, her hood bent like foil. The mailbox? Not even scratched. Karen stumbled out, dazed but unhurt, clutching her phone like it could save her. "What the hell did you do?" she shouted, voice shaking. I kept my tone level. "Installed a compliant mailbox. You set a trap." "It was there the whole time, Karen. You hit it. Again." She looked around. Neighbors were peeking through curtains, some even stepping outside with phones out. She realized she'd just exposed herself, not just to me, but to everyone she'd bullied. I walked up, calm as stone, and pointed to my camera. "Everything's on video. You want to file a complaint? Go ahead." She glared, trembling, then stormed back to her SUV, or what was left of it, and drove off, metal scraping the asphalt. I stood there under the streetlight, the smell of burnt rubber in the air, and felt something I hadn't in months. Satisfaction. The mailbox stood tall, untouched, glinting in the night like a silent monument to karma. By morning, the story had already spread like wildfire. You couldn't walk 2 houses without hearing someone mention Karen's crash, the HOA president, the woman who'd fined people for leaving trash cans out too long, had plowed her SUV into a perfectly legal mailbox. I didn't even have to post the footage this time. Someone else did, probably one of the neighbors who'd recorded it from their porch. It hit the local neighborhood Facebook page before sunrise. The caption read, "HOA President meets her match, literally." By noon, my phone was blowing up. Messages from neighbors I'd barely spoken to. Laughter, support, screenshots of Karen's red-faced comments trying to spin the story. She claimed my mailbox was deliberately reinforced to cause damage. But the bylaws were clear. As long as it met height and setback rules, it was legal. For the first time, I wasn't on the defensive. I had the upper hand. Still, I knew Karen wouldn't go quietly. Power-hungry people never do. Sure enough, the next day, I got a certified letter from the HOA demanding an immediate removal of the hazardous mailbox structure. It cited safety concerns for community vehicles. I laughed. The nerve of her. She'd crashed into it herself, and now she wanted it gone. I decided to respond in kind. Professionally, but publicly. I wrote a detailed reply addressed to the HOA board, attaching every video, photo, and timestamp I'd collected over the months. I included the footage of her SUV hitting my previous mailboxes, the vandalism, even the spray paint threat. I CC'd every homeowner on the street. The subject line read, "Pattern of HOA harassment and property damage. Formal record." I hit send and waited. Within hours, my inbox filled with replies. Not to me, but to everyone. People sharing their own experiences, confirming her bullying, adding their own evidence. It turned into a digital mutiny. That night, Jake came over with a six-pack, and we sat on the porch watching the comments roll in. "She's finished," he said, shaking his head. "Not yet," I replied. "She's still got friends on the board. They'll try to protect her," and sure enough, they did. The next morning, the HOA issued a statement claiming, "Certain members are spreading false and defamatory information." It didn't name me, but everyone knew. So I took it one step further. I filed a police report, not to escalate, but to formalize the damage she'd caused. The officer who came by was professional, but couldn't hide his smirk when I showed him the crash footage. "Looks like you built one hell of a mailbox," he said. "Built it by the book," I answered. He nodded. "Then you've got nothing to worry about. If she damaged your property, that's on her." I thanked him, then posted the incident number publicly. No anger, just facts. That's when things really exploded. Karen's credibility shattered. People started demanding a board vote. Someone even started a petition. Remove Karen as HOA president. Within 24 hours, half the neighborhood had signed. For years, everyone had been too scared to stand up to her. But after she wrecked her car trying to bully me, something changed. The fear broke, and all I had to do was build a mailbox strong enough to take a hit. The next HOA meeting was packed, standing room only. Normally, maybe 8 or 10 people showed up, but this time, the entire neighborhood crammed into the clubhouse. I could feel the tension before I even stepped inside. Karen sat at the front table, her signature clipboard in hand, but for once, she didn't look confident. Her face was stiff, her smile mechanical. To her left were 2 board members, both visibly uncomfortable. The air felt heavy with anticipation. "Let's begin," she said, tapping her pen. "I understand there have been complaints," the room murmured. Someone near the back shouted, "You mean lawsuits?" and laughter rippled through the crowd. She tried to regain control. "We'll address these issues one at a time. First, the matter of Mr. Cole's mailbox." I stood before she could finish. "You mean the one that meets every HOA requirement and survived your hit and run?" The crowd gasped softly. Karen's eyes darted like she was calculating her next move. "That's an unfounded accusation." "Unfounded?" I held up my phone, playing the crash footage on speaker. The metallic bang echoed through the room. On the screen, her SUV plowed into my mailbox in perfect clarity. People craned their necks to see. One man whistled. Another woman muttered, "Unbelievable." Karen's voice quivered. "That could be anyone's car?" "Yours," I said simply, enlarging the frame that showed her license plate and HOA parking decal. Silence filled the room. She opened her mouth, closed it again. Her hand trembled slightly as she adjusted her papers. "This meeting is out of order." But the crowd wasn't listening anymore. A woman named Lisa, who'd lived here for 20 years, stood up. "You fined me $300 for my Christmas lights being too bright, Karen." Then another voice. "You made me tear out my rose bushes because they weren't approved species." One after another, people rose and spoke, calm at first, then louder, angrier. It was like a dam breaking. Karen's face flushed. "This is a witch hunt." "No," I said, stepping forward. "This is accountability," the board members whispered among themselves. One of them, a younger guy named Daniel, finally spoke up. "We've reviewed the evidence, Karen. There's enough here to justify your removal pending investigation." "You can't remove me," she snapped. "I am the HOA." Daniel leaned into the microphone. "Not anymore." Applause erupted. Some people actually stood and cheered. Karen's face went pale, her eyes glassy with disbelief. She grabbed her clipboard and stormed out, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. I stood there for a moment, heart pounding. Months of frustration, fines, and humiliation, all of it boiling down to that single satisfying sound, the door slamming on her reign. After the meeting, neighbors gathered around me, laughing, shaking my hand. Someone joked about turning my mailbox into a neighborhood landmark. Another brought cupcakes shaped like tiny metal boxes. For the first time since moving to Maplewood Estates, the air felt light, free. People lingered outside, chatting like old friends instead of prisoners of a petty dictatorship. That night, as I walked home under the soft glow of the streetlights, I passed the steel mailbox. It stood there, unbothered, proud, the one thing Karen couldn't bend, bully, or break. I ran my hand across the cool metal and smiled. Sometimes revenge doesn't need shouting or chaos. Sometimes it's just a quiet moment of peace, knowing the bully finally got exactly what was coming. A week after Karen's public meltdown, the neighborhood felt different. Quiet, but in the best possible way. No more nasty letters, no more reminders taped to doors, no more HOA patrols at dawn. For the first time in years, Maplewood Estates actually felt like a community instead of a dictatorship with manicured lawns. Karen's beige SUV was gone, too. Rumor had it she'd resigned officially after her insurance company got the footage of the crash. Someone mentioned the board was pressing her to reimburse damages, not just to me, but to everyone she'd fined without cause. She'd vanished from the HOA chat, deleted her social media, and retreated behind her curtains. I didn't need to celebrate. The silence was reward enough. I spent that weekend fixing up the front yard, trimming the hedges, repainting the porch, replacing the old welcome mat I'd been meaning to toss for years. Neighbors stopped by more than usual. People smiled again. Kids played basketball in the driveway without worrying about citations. One morning, Mr. Jacobson, the veteran whose flag she'd once banned, walked over holding a mug of coffee. "Good work." "Son," he said, nodding toward my indestructible mailbox. "That thing's a legend now," I laughed. "Guess it's earned its place," he grinned. Karen picked the wrong guy to mess with. The new interim HOA board, Daniel and two others, stopped by later that week. They thanked me for bringing everything to light, even asked if I wanted to join the board to help rebuild trust. I politely declined. "I'm good," I said. "I've had my fill of HOA politics." But I did offer one suggestion. Maybe start focusing on actual community improvement instead of control. People moved here to live, not to walk on eggshells. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. That's exactly what we plan to do. That night, as I sat on the porch with a beer in hand, I glanced at the steel mailbox under the glow of the street lamp. It gleamed like a quiet sentinel, scarred, scratched, but unbreakable. Kind of like me after all this. Funny thing was, I didn't hate Karen. Not anymore. Anger burns fast, but satisfaction lasts longer. She'd built her kingdom on fear, and it had taken just one act of defiance to bring it all crashing down. Maybe that was the real lesson. Not about revenge, but about standing your ground when someone abuses power. Sometimes the right response isn't loud or violent. Sometimes it's a simple act of quiet resistance. a steel post in a world full of weak ones. Before heading inside, I slipped a small note into the mailbox. Not for the mailman, but for myself. It said, "Don't let people like her change who you are, but never let them walk over you either." The next morning, a group of neighbors gathered by the cul-de-sac for coffee and donuts. Someone had even printed T-shirts that read, "Stand tall, steal strong." They handed me one, and I couldn't help but laugh. Karen might have run the HOA, but now, the neighborhood ran itself, united, freer than ever. I took a deep breath of that quiet suburban air and smiled. The kind of smile that only comes when you've fought the fight, stood your ground, and finally won. And that's how I finally stood up to the HOA bully who thought she could run over everything in her way, including me. Sometimes justice doesn't need a courtroom. Sometimes it's just a steel mailbox that refuses to fall. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more HOA revenge tales just like this one.